If you remember, I was talking about the images by Brassai being quite dark, not necessarily psychologically dark, but there was a lot of darkness in the club. Arbus was very influenced by Brassai. What she liked about his photographs was that they were so dark. And this is what she says. Brassai taught me something about obscurity, because for years now I've been tripped out on clarity. I don't know if in English, tripped out on clarity sounds very 60s. It's like hippie. Ooh, I'm tripped out on clarity. Lately it's been striking me how I really love what I cannot see in a photograph. I love what I cannot see in a photograph. In Brassai there's the element of actual physical darkness, and it's very thrilling. Now, almost all of Arbus's pictures are taken in the harsh light of day. She almost never takes nighttime shots. So instead, the darkness is psychological. Even in the transvestite picture, there is a darkness here, even though the foreground is lit up, the background is dark, and there's a sort of psychological darkness to the depiction. The transvestite, as I said, is not shown made up, but is shown undone, taken apart, as like a car engine that has been taken to pieces. This one, similarly, there's a sort of disorder to the apartment in the background that is supposed to mirror a kind of disorder in the image itself. The bed is unmade, which both suggest that they've been in the bed, which is sexualizing them. But it's also a messy picture. Both of the pictures I've shown you, the transvestite and this one, are messy photographs. They are not composed in the way that the Brassai pictures were composed. And therefore there's some symbolic indication of psychological disorder that people have criticized greatly. I personally think she's trying to do something interesting. I don't find it offensive, but there you have it. In her biography, of all the photographs that she's taken, the biographer wrote in disapproving ways about this one. She says this: Arbus's constant journey into the world of transvestites, drag queens, hermaphrodites, and transsexuals may have helped define her view of what it means to experience sexual conflict. She once followed two friends from street to apartment, and the resulting portraits suggest an almost sinister sexual power between these mannish females. The larger, more traditionally feminine figure stands with her arm possessively around the shoulder of her boyish partner. In another shot, the couple is seen lying on their rumpled bed. One of them is in the middle of a sneeze. It is both intimate and creepy, and I cannot find that picture anywhere of the couple on the bed and one of them sneezing. Now, why it would be creepy is not clear to me, okay, so maybe this is her reading. But also, she's doing very much what Brassai did earlier. She says they're both mannish females. Again, very clearly there is a masculine partner, there is a feminine partner. But by implication, by association with lesbianism, they are both mannish. Okay, they are rendered as mannish. What clearly is bothersome to the biographer here is a question of incorrect scale. Incorrect scale. The fact that the feminine partner is larger than the masculine partner is what offends more than anything. And here there's a kind of naturalization of the notion of size, as if there are not men who are often shorter than their feminine partners, as if there are not small men, large women, right? We have a naturalization of the order of things within which heterosexuality is partly about a large, therefore a male person, with a small, therefore a female person. Here, the fact that the scale is reversed indicates a certain kind of inversion within the relationship, okay? But here it's a very visual kind of difference. And I find that very interesting, this notion of scale. I'll end Arbus on this picture. This is different from most of Arbus's work in the fact that there is nothing strange about the picture. It's actually a gorgeous composition that is much more like Brassai in the sense of the orderliness. This is a picture of Storme della Barry. And when I was doing my research on drag kings, I quickly came across his name because he was the first male impersonator ever in New York City in the 1930s. And there was a troupe of drag queens, and he was the only drag king. And he's famous in New York. He still lives in the Chelsea Hotel. and he still will tell you many, many stories about being a drag king in the 1930s and a person of color in New York at that time doing this kind of impersonation. Arbus found Stormé at a club, was fascinated by him, asked to take his photograph, and here you have this very elegant portrait. She then submitted the photograph along with a whole series of photographs of New York outsiders. Again, giant, the famous picture of a giant, very, very tall man at home with his parents, a very small man, a man who lived in a swamp alone, a man who lived on the street, a woman with a deformity, many, many pictures of people with disabilities and so on, many of which are very offensive, I will say, okay? She submitted them all to New York Harper's Magazine in a series called The Eccentrics. The Harper's Magazine wrote back to her and said, "Dear Miss Arbus, we cannot publish these photographs because one photograph offends would offend our readers. Lady impersonating a gentleman is obscene, and we cannot put it in our magazine." Okay, so this is the photograph. Imagine all the photographs that you've submitted. This is the photograph that gives offense. And again, I want us to realize that, therefore, something that is seen in this photograph in the 1960s cannot be captured now. What we see now is a beautiful, gorgeous trans man or drag king or male impersonator, onabe type of person, right? Somebody almost recognizable to us. But in 1960, this was obscenity, okay? So there are these very clearly shifting norms around what can and what cannot be shown as part of queer culture. We would not read this as a photograph that is freakish, but in 1960, this is clearly freakishness. Just so you know, Susan Sontag was extremely critical of Diane Arbus. Susan Sontag loves breast-size pictures and says that they're moody and intricate and they really capture something about Paris. But she says Diane Arbus is just a freak show photographer and she just objectifies people and sensationalizes them. There's no value to her work. So I want to show you both of them and have you think about both sets of images.